religious traditions. Thank you.
Now I would like to welcome Brother Abdullah Abdullah is a former Christian of Portuguese descent who embraced Islam at a young age and has studied Islam in depth since he was 18. He also has an academic background in computer sciences. Abdullah has had a long experience in working for Islamic intellectual revival and the establishment of Islamic Sharia in the Muslim world. His activities involve speaking at community centers, universities, colleges, and appearances on various TV programs. He is also experienced in debating and has debated extensively with atheists, secularists, and Christians on a variety of platforms, including public, TV, and radio. He is currently a member of the Muslim Debate Initiative, a public discussion forum that promotes open dialogue and debate. Please welcome Brother Abdullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi at-tayyibin wa sahbihi at-tahirin. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today, and I brought a laptop. I don't usually give talks with a laptop. I usually give talks with nice paper, but people thought I was back in the Stone Age, and I think I should modernize how I give talks. So I bought a laptop. And now I have to squint as I read from this very small screen, so please forgive me if I make funny eye movements while I'm looking at my monitor. I'd like to thank first the Southampton Islamic Society and the Atheist Society for hosting this interesting debate. I'd also like to thank Dr. Robert Storgård for attending and giving us what was no doubt a good enunciation for the case for morality without God. Now, I'd like to begin with asking a question, can atheists be moral? If anyone came in today thinking I would be claiming that atheists, especially Western atheists, are immoral or self-centered, egotistical and self-interested, then I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I'm not here today to demonstrate that atheists can't be moral. I'm here to demonstrate that they have no intellectual foundation to be. Or at the very least, they don't have an acceptable or consistent set of morals. And I'll explain why, near the end of my presentation, the very reason why atheists with morals do exist. First, let's discuss what morals are. Morals do not relate to actions. Morals relate to the value behind an action or an intention. So doing an action, for example, giving money to the poor, is not moral. It's a moral action. It's an action that has value. Let's take one example, and obviously I'd say that all values are determined based on a set of criteria. So for example, if you view giving money to the poor as something which is valuable, then it becomes your moral. That's the moral that you hold. And it's very much like a central bank of a country. In a central bank of a country, they print out paper money. The paper money has no intrinsic value except just a kind of rectangle piece of paper with some printing on it. It has no intrinsic value to it. What gives it the value is that the bank is willing to transfer anyone that comes to it and pay the bearer a sum of £5 or £10, whatever that means in today's fiat system. But certainly back in the old days, it used to mean they give you gold. And so people used to take money as having some value. You go to the shops, you have confidence that the shopkeeper also values that money as you value that money. And so it gains currency, and that's why we call it currency. Now, continuing into the economic example, what do you think has real intrinsic value? Paper money or gold coins? Obviously it would be the gold coins. Gold coins have an intrinsic value. And paper money is just based on confidence. It's actually one of the biggest confidence scams ever in every country, where they print out paper money and we all have confidence in this paper money, until, of course, you have rapid inflation, which obviously is destroying Zimbabwe. It destroyed the economy of Argentina and many countries which collapsed due to high inflation because paper money has no intrinsic value. It's up to you to believe in that value. In a way, it's like a noble lie. You have to believe this lie for it to have value. And this is very interesting, because I'm going to now relate this to the issue of morals. You see, if you don't believe in anything with any moral that has intrinsic value, with a demonstrable intrinsic value, then essentially when you're taking something to be moral, you're taking it based on trust, on confidence. You're confident that what your parents told you is moral, and you will blindly follow this moral. And it's the same thing for money. And you'll be surprised how many societies have based their economies on such typical confidence scams. And well, I would argue that secular morality is also a confidence scam, but I'll go into why. So what is the possible basis for morals? How do we base our morals? What is a good way of basing morals? Well, let's discuss the different bases there are. Let's discuss, let's say, an evolutionary or genetic basis. Michael Ruse, a philosopher of science from the University of Guelph in Canada, writes, the position of modern evolutionists is that humans have an awareness of morality because such an awareness is of biological worth. Morality is a biological adaptation no less than your hands, your feet, your teeth. And he continues, I appreciate it that when someone says, love thy neighbor as thyself, they think they are referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly about foundation. Morality is just aid to survival and reproduction. Any deeper meaning is illusory. But now let's say, okay, for example, let's use evolution now as the basis for our morality. Fine, cooperating, being a team player is helpful. But what if you are a very strong team player? What if you can dominate others? What if you can get loads of mates for yourself, assuming you're the alpha male of a pack of human beings? Shouldn't your genetic genes have more right to be reproduced with as many females as possible, and the weaker males don't have this right because you are stronger, you're more intelligent, you're what have you, you have more resources, whatever the case might be. The strong deserve to survive and the weak deserve to die off or not reproduce. Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche despised religion, and he's a very famous atheist philosopher. Everyone knows Nietzsche. He despised religion because he said it makes us help the weak and it restricts the strong. He condemned Christianity as a slave morality. You see, why should we help the weak? And why should the strong have to restrict themselves and limit themselves to pull the dead weight? This is what Nietzsche said. And he came out this very open, because this is the reality of when you reject God and you reject these religions, which make you care for the weak. It's counter-evolutionary. People might say, maybe my emotions are the result of my genes. Me wanting to help someone and be altruistic, my genes make me do that. Oh, and that's totally fine. That's really great. But what if you are a mass murdering psychopath? You could argue, my genes made me do so as well. And because genes determine morality, it's just as good as a person who helps other people. Maybe the mass murdering psychopath gets to eliminate all his competing male rivals and gets to mate with as many women as possible because he is the strongest guy. In genetically speaking, what he's doing is moral, according to that basis. So remember, humans have a good side, we've also got a bad side. And if you're saying that whatever comes from a human being is intrinsically moral, then both sides are intrinsically moral too. Funnily enough, this would cause what I call the determinist negation of moral agency. Bit of a long double-barrel sentence. Basically, if there's no soul, there's no free will. What made you do something is a combination of your genes and the situation, the context you're in, including what you're taught and the environment you're in. In that situation, you are not morally culpable for anything you do, because it wasn't you. There is no intrinsic you. It's just the result of your ancestors' genes making you do it, and the context which you were born into made you do the actions you did. Something like a good excuse for a wife beater. Say, look what you made me do. Blaming the wife, because the wife acting that way, the husband had to beat her because that was his genetic disposition. Again, if you want to go by that, then no one is culpable, no one is guilty. We're just mechanisms in a great big machine in this universe that just does things. What about social imitation? That's a basis for morality. Richard Taylor, an eminent ethicist, said that contemporary writers and ethics who blithely discourse upon moral right and wrong and moral obligation without any reference to religion are really just weaving intellectual webs from thin air, which amount to saying that they discourse without meaning. If social imitation, whatever society is doing, you do it. Most people, religious and atheist, learn their morals through social imitation. That is the biggest teacher of morals. You know, monkey see, monkey do, essentially. And this is because a lot of us follow what society has taught us blindly, that we have a lot of morals. It's because our parents hit us when we did something wrong, or we hit our sister, or was mean to whoever. Our parents chastised us by some way, a shape or form, that we thought, okay, that was wrong, and we did something and we got rewarded, that was right. It was pain associated. Pain and pleasure association, conditioning, made us, gave us our morality. And that is ephemeral. It's just a matter of how you were conditioned. Literally how you were brainwashed when you were young to view your tastes. Again, has no basis. The other basis for morality could be the enlightened self-interest, as people like to call it, or the social contract. It's very interesting. The humanist philosopher Paul Kurtz says, the central question about morality and ethical principles concerns this ontological foundation. If they are neither derived from God nor anchored in some transcendent ground, are they purely ephemeral? Basically, you could, if you're allying with someone for a certain contract or a certain reason, and as long as your interest is being fulfilled, you will be in that contract, you'll be in that social contract with society. But what if your interests are not being fulfilled? What if you're a member of society and you're downtrodden, you're poor, society isn't helping you, or you try to get ahead and everyone else is getting ahead, or other people, or the alpha males are just abusing the system? What do you do then? What do you do? Then you say, oh, forget this. Yeah, forget this contract, it's not working for me. Because self-interest changes. Sometimes it's not always in your interest to stay with a contract. Sometimes you should break the contract if your self-interest is your primary goal. Again, it's not a basis. People can break their contracts. Self-interest is very whimsical. What about the basis of mutual happiness? Let's do things to bring mutual happiness. Well, again, that has no basis for the human context. Humans are essentially egoists. We experience life only as individuals. We don't experience life as a collective. Why should we help other people to get happy if it costs our happiness? For example, people might say, okay, look, maybe we can all live together, and as long as we don't hurt each other physically, that's okay. All right, fine. Let's consider this. Let's say you're in a marriage. You don't like your wife, or you don't like your husband. And there is another mate available, and he or she likes you, and there's an opportunity for you to engage that mate in a physical relationship. You can commit adultery. If your partner finds out, it will hurt them. It won't hurt them physically. You haven't hurt them physically, but you've hurt them emotionally. You've prioritized your happiness, because eventually, if your only criteria is what makes you happy, then that's the only thing you can look at, over the happiness of other people. And people say, but if I prioritize that other person's happiness, then I'll be miserable. So what do you choose? That's the problem, which again the mutual happiness basis doesn't give you any solutions for. What about, and this was quoted by Dr. Raymond Tellis, very esteemed friend that I know. He said that equality, he said that the reason why I'm moral to all my fellow human beings is because we are all intrinsically equal. He believes in a transcendental equality between human beings. It's interesting, an atheist is using the word transcendental, but the political philosopher, Louis Hodgman, notes, if we were to accept the empirical reality of people and their differences, there should be a presumption of inequality rather than the presumption of equality, upon which so many political philosophers depend. We are equal, it is almost sure, in the sense of being before God, since we are in fact equal in virtually no other way. There is nothing about us that is equal to another human being, with the possible exception of an arbitrary definition of what is a race, what is a particular racial group of species. Apart from this, we differ in intelligence, we differ in strength, we differ in skin color, in size and shape, and bone mass, and all kinds of numerous ways. So how are we all equal? What is it intrinsic about us equal? If you say, oh, but we're all human, doesn't that make us equal? Just because we visit a similarity, does that make us equal? So I'm made out of organic compounds like this desk here. So this desk is made out of wood. I'm made out of organic compounds. This is made out of organic compounds. Does it mean that I'm equal to this desk? Just because we have one similarity? It's arbitrary. You want to pick something that will fit it, but again, there's nothing equal about us if you consider the scientific reality of the different human beings. So, the only other basis is what I call conservatism, which is arbitrary morals that are taught by imitation and enforcement. Again, it's similar to social imitation, which is basically in a society, they have a culture. This culture is preserved for thousands of years, and everyone born into that culture is taught the morals which were preserved by the many ancestors and passed down. What Richard Dawkins likes to call memes. Now, in that situation, which most human beings traditionally have always followed, this cultural morality that's been passed down to them, this has only been the only effective way that human beings have actually preserved morality in an unchanging form. Of course, every culture that has done this has had to use either a religious or some kind of metaphysical basis to do so, whether it be karma, Taoism, or the Abrahamic faiths, or what have you, or various pagan or idolatry. They've had to use some metaphysical basis to justify why you should behave according to morals that this society follows. And that's a sociological fact throughout history. It's always been like this. Now, what did the great philosophers think? What did they think? Forget about me, I'm not a great philosopher, nor do I pretend to be. But what did the great philosophers think? Well, let's say Hume. You know what Hume, he's a great atheist philosopher. What did he say? Morals are just tastes. What you feel, what your likes and dislikes, that's your morality. He's being very honest, Hume. Immanuel Kant, very interesting. Immanuel Kant, he critiqued obviously reason as a basis to derive, I guess, morality only just using pure reason and observation of the universe. We can come to some kind of deduction of what is morals. He had to put into his beliefs. He had to put in the concept of God, because God is the only absolute basis that will give legitimacy to any moral system. And this was Immanuel Kant had to do this. I think he called it the super sensible being. He called it God. Nietzsche obviously was very much more abrupt and very straight to the point. He said, without God, there's no morality. And he was famous for mourning the death of God. Because he was one of the famous philosophers that said that God is dead, he said. So he mourned the death of God and said that now that the human beings have to embrace some kind of terrible destiny or without any kind of basis for why we are moral and so on. This is Nietzsche, very open and very straight to the point to what the actual issues are. So that's the case. There is no basis. There's no basis for the political moralities. I want to give a side point. I'm going to use 2 minutes of this, of what happens when societies apply a materialistic basis, and they say, right, we're going to order society according to this materialistic basis. What happens? Well, obviously the political philosopher John Rawls calls people like this political perfectionists. Sometimes they're called extremists in the current vernacular. An example of this, let's say if you believe that morals are determined by genetics, this could lead to social Darwinism. Social Darwinism was essentially that the strong should prevail, the weak should be got rid of. The Nazis were very much for social Darwinism, and very interestingly enough, in the 1930s, Churchill was also for this. He spoke about sterilizing the feeble-minded imbeciles, what he calls imbeciles, and also the weak-minded. They should be sterilized because they shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. They are weakening the genetic pool of the nation. Very interesting. Churchill and Nazis share something in common: social Darwinism. Utilitarianism, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, which is basically that you should get the maximum pleasure or happiness to the maximum amount of people. And unfortunately, because you should look at the bigger picture, this fortune look at the bigger picture, they were allowed to do a little evil to do a lot of good. So for example, Mill and Bentham, John Stuart Mill and Bentham, these are the famous utilitarians, they justified colonization and repression of quote-unquote barbarians, because in the long run, it's for their own good. So fine, you can torture them, you can massacre them, you can kill the civilians, because in the long run, it's for their own good. That's where we get colonialism from. Colonialism isn't an aberration of Western history, it's part of the Western ideology. Utilitarianism still continues to this very day, war in Iraq and all that stuff. The social contract, when applied in France, for example, they had the reign of terror, which under Robespierre, where everyone must conform to what the state defines is the model citizen. And of course, the state has no moral authority, and so they had to apply it by a reign of terror, by fear, very Machiavellian. Now, why has not a lot of these things happened in England? And I ask very quickly on this. England has always had that kind of duality. It's had the leftists, these political perfectionists on one scale, and it's had the conservatives on the other scale. And the conservatives believe in morals which was bequeathed to them by their Christian past. And so it kind of pulled Britain from not going into extremism, like other countries that went into extremism. Now, how does God give us morals? God is an absolute and transcendent basis that values our actions. So God is infinite, eternal. If God, think of him, going back to the kind of Bank of England example, God values the actions we do, and He is not a temporary thing. He is an eternal, permanent thing. He is an absolute basis to reset our criteria for what is morality. God provides intellectual narrative upon which to judge our actions as to whether or not they are fulfilling our ultimate objective. For example, when the Quran says, I have not created man or jinn except to worship me. When God says this, it's our purpose. Anything that is suiting our purpose is good. Anything that goes against our purpose is bad. Much like if you had a car, if the car doesn't work, it's a bad car. If the car works and gets you from A to B, it's a good car because it fulfills the purpose. Hence, God gives us purpose and we can judge things. And of course, God gives us a morality of the ultimate enlightened self-interest, where we are offered in the hereafter the rewards and the punishments for those people who are of that nature. And the beautiful thing about this is securing your reward in the hereafter will not impinge upon the reward that other people will get. Unlike in this society, the more resources you get, the less other people will get. This is what God can offer us. So why do there exist moral atheists? Atheists who are moral. Easy, social imitation. They imitate the society they're in. They were born in society, they weren't told this. Blind adoption, the second point, blind adoption of morality from previous generations. Western society is built on Christianity. Was built on Christianity. Christianity had the concept of a soul, which gives you moral agency. You are now morally culpable because your soul has free will, therefore you are at fault if you commit a crime. Also, because all souls are equal before God, we have equality. And of course, the humanists and the libertarians borrowed these Christian concepts and brought them into the modern era, building an elaborate system around a very Christian core. And of course, why moral basis matters is because people, Christian atheists who have not been conditioned to be moral, how are we going to, if a person's rich, and he's very selfish and self-centered, and he has lots of money, and he's enjoying his resources, and he's getting loads of them, how do you tell that person to be more moral? There is no benefit in it for them to be moral if an atheist has been brought up with this disposition of a selfish rich person, for example. How do you change that person? How do you get a person off of alcohol if they are binge drinking or whatever? How do you get that person? They enjoy it. How do you get it off? How do you get them off them? There is no basis to get it off them except an appeal to the metaphysical, which they deny. Anyway, that ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.